Don Jr., he's so embarrassing. He's on the stand. He's testifying in this $250 million fraud trial, and he has to compliment. He said his father is an artist with real estate. You have Donald Trump Jr., who was in court again this morning. There he is. You hear the protesters chanting, crime family, and that is basically what these people are, a crime family. The father of hotel gyms. He said, maybe someone put a gym in a building somewhere, but no one did it at the scale of my father. He's saying that his father, the father of the hotel gym, is a guy who's never stepped inside one.
Jimmy Kimmel just dropped a joke that reportedly made Donald Trump Jr. squirm. And trust me, the irony is next level. From awkward family secrets to a courtroom chant that Jr. probably wishes the world never heard, Kimmel laid it all out on live television. But the real showstopper? Donald Trump's reaction. Pure chaos. Quick favor, before we dive in, if you're enjoying this kind of content, please hit that like button and subscribe. Over 98% of viewers watch without subscribing. It's totally free for you, but it makes a huge difference for us. Already clicked it? Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, back to the madness. So, Donald Trump Jr. recently called his father an artist. Yep, and not the kind who paints landscapes or sculpts statues. He meant his dad is an artist when it comes to money and real estate. You can probably see where this is going. Kimmel didn't miss a beat, turning that into comedy gold. Because, let's be honest, calling Trump a financial artist in the middle of a civil fraud trial doesn't exactly scream good timing. It sounds more like an accidental roast than a defense. Apparently, this was Junior's way of explaining away his dad's wildly inflated financial statements, spinning them as the work of a misunderstood genius rather than, potential fraud. Bold move, Don Jr. Bold move.
A big five accounting firm, like one of the biggest accounting firms in the world, I can pay them millions of dollars. I rely on them to do accounting, but I'm supposed to know more than them. By this logic, insurance companies are going to start suing patients.
The amount of ass-kissing in this trial is insane. DJ TJ, of course, denies any and all wrongdoing and is instead going with the "our accountants did it" defense.
For listening to their doctors. Right? Do you understand? Am I supposed to know more? Oh, Don Jr. doesn't know anything about it. I'm not an accountant. I'm a business guy.
Donald Trump Jr. took the stand during the fraud trial against his family and attempted to explain away the glaring inconsistencies in their financial records by framing his father as a creative visionary. According to Jr., when Donald Trump claimed his properties were worth billions more than their actual appraised value, he wasn't lying. He was simply expressing his artistic flair. Yes, that was the defense. Try not to laugh. As expected, this argument landed poorly. It didn't just stretch the truth, it twisted it into a full-on pretzel. Enter Jimmy Kimmel, who jumped on the moment faster than Trump Jr. jumps to post a meme. Kimmel sarcastically played along with the idea of Trump as an artist, but then delivered a zinger that brought the house down. The only thing Trump would be painting is sunless tanner on his face every morning. It was sharp, it was visual, and it perfectly captured the image most people associate with Trump. More orange than artistic. The crowd ate it up. But the irony ran even deeper. While Trump Jr. was inside the courtroom waxing poetic about his father's so-called brilliance, protesters outside were chanting loud and clear, "Crime family! Crime family!" On one side, you had Jr. trying to cast his father as a misunderstood genius. On the other, the public firmly anchoring the Trumps in a real-life reality show melodrama. The contrast couldn't have been more stark, and naturally, Kimmel didn't miss a beat.
How they fit into all of this.
They don't fit into all of this. What have they been asking the kids? It's very simple. They'll ask the kids, did you give a value to somebody? Did you do something? And everybody said resoundingly no.
And with all the complaining the Trumps do about this trial playing out in the media, you could barely even turn the channel without seeing their lawyer doing an interview with somebody.
And these kids did nothing wrong. They should not be in this case. Ivanka's already out of the case. The boys should not be in the case.
That's right. They're just boys. They're kids. Eric has a book report due this weekend.
Kimmel used this disconnect between Trump Jr.'s courtroom defense and public perception to highlight just how far the Trump's delusion seems to stray from reality. He quipped that calling Donald Trump an artist is like calling a toddler a master chef because they squish Play-Doh into a pancake. You get the picture. Through humor, Kimmel underscored how absurd it is to defend alleged financial fraud by dressing it up as misunderstood art. Judging by the uproarious laughter from the studio audience, he nailed it. But Kimmel didn't stop there. He broke it down in a way everyone could relate to, saying that calling Trump an artist wasn't just stretching the truth, it was like calling the Titanic a swimming pool. That's the power of sharp comedy. It distills complex criticism into a bite-sized punchline that leaves little room for rebuttal. It was clever without sounding preachy, and funny without veering into cruelty. Though, let's be honest, Trump Jr. practically handed him the material on a silver platter. Kimmel then circled back to the protesters gathered outside the courtroom and couldn't resist poking fun at the perfect timing of their chants aligning with Jr.'s testimony. He joked that instead of yelling, "Crime family," the protesters missed a golden opportunity to shout something more artistically cryptic, like "abstract liars," or maybe "Picasso of paperwork." Once again, Kimmel took the absurdity Trump Jr. served up and turned it into pure comedic gold.
Don and Don Jr. had some father and son event this weekend. They went to the UFC fight at Madison Square Garden. There they are. Trump's being cheered on. He's got Dana White there. He's got Tucker Carlson in the back. He's got Kid Rock in tow. And by the way, Donald Trump's older sister, Marianne, the former judge, died this morning. They found her unresponsive in her apartment. She was 86 years old. So far today, Trump has posted lashing out at the witch hunt. Don Jr. was thrilled to be a part of the group. He posted this picture of him and Tuck cackling in their blue checkered print shirts. A couple of banana Republicans right there. And
Kimmel completely flipped Trump Jr., his narrative on its head, exposing just how disconnected it was from the way everyday people see the situation. By the time he delivered his final punchline, you could practically hear a collective sigh of relief from viewers who've been baffled by Jr.'s awkward attempts to reframe his family's legal woes as some misunderstood stroke of brilliance. At one point, Kimmel compared Trump's alleged financial exaggerations to a kindergartner, adding a few extra zeros to their Monopoly bank account and hoping no one notices. The audience erupted in laughter, and really, who could blame them? It perfectly captured the blend of childish bravado and obliviousness that many associate with Trump Sr. But Kimmel didn't just poke fun, he dismantled the whole idea with humor as his scalpel. He peeled back the layers of Jr.'s bizarre artist defense, exposing the absurdity beneath, all while keeping the tone light enough to entertain rather than preach. The result? Trump Jr. His attempt to rebrand his father as a misunderstood genius went from laughable to unforgettable, for all the wrong reasons. And the brilliance of it all? Kimmel's jokes didn't just target Trump Jr., they subtly reminded the audience why this fraud case is even happening in the first place. After all, it's hard to sell the image of a visionary artist when most people are seeing finger paints and smudged crayons. But the real fireworks started when the focus shifted to Trump Sr.'s reaction. Let's just say he wasn't exactly laughing along with the rest of us. His response cranked the cringe factor up to an entirely new level, something you really have to see to believe. Meanwhile, outside the courtroom, the chaos continued. Protesters lined the steps of the Manhattan Supreme Court, unleashing a now infamous chant aimed squarely at the Trump family. "Crime family! Crime family!" It was bold, blunt, and delivered with that special kind of New York edge that pulls no punches. The timing was perfect too. Right as Trump Jr. tried to elevate his father's image, the streets answered back with raw, unfiltered public opinion. For Kimmel, it was the ultimate setup. A courtroom full of drama, a fired-up crowd outside, and a Trump on the stand spinning tales. It was comedy gold, and he made sure not a single beat went to waste. Naturally, Jimmy Kimmel swooped in and transformed what many viewed as a deeply humiliating moment for the Trumps into pure comedy gold. Picture the scene. Trump Jr. is inside the courtroom doing his best to convince everyone that his father is some kind of financial artist, while just outside, the air is filled with the unmistakable sound of protesters chanting, "Crime family! Crime family!" It wasn't just embarrassing, it was theatrical, like trying to deliver a heartfelt speech while someone in the back row is banging pots and pans to drown you out. And if that alone didn't sting enough, Kimmel made sure the moment left a lasting mark. Never one to let irony go to waste, Kimmel framed the entire spectacle like a scene straight out of a mob movie parody. And let's just say, Trump's image didn't come out any cleaner. He ran with the protesters' chant, sarcastically nodding in agreement. That is basically what these people are, a crime family. But Kimmel didn't stop there. He doubled down, labeling them a very dumb crime family, before dropping the final punchline, the Gamboshos, if you will. It was the perfect insult blending self-importance, chaos, and a total lack of self-awareness into one absurd little package. The beauty of the joke was in its simplicity. You didn't even need context to laugh. It landed so hard that the studio audience burst out, and for viewers at home, it became one of those surreal, cartoonish moments that seemed to tear down the Trump's carefully crafted image of power and seriousness in one comedic swoop. Every time they try to appear as a formidable, respectable family reality, or in this case Kimmel, shreds that illusion effortlessly. But Kimmel wasn't just in it for the laughs. He used the protest chant as a launchpad to make a sharper point about how deeply entrenched public judgment has become for the Trump family, especially when so many of their wounds appear to be self-inflicted. He joked that the chant was so catchy, it might as well be the theme song for an unauthorized Trump family reality show, something like Keeping Up with the Convictions. Because if there's one thing the Trumps consistently deliver, it's attention, and not the kind any PR team in the world can fix. It also served as a reminder of how skilled Jimmy Kimmel is at merging everyday humor with sharp, stinging critiques of public figures. By comparing the Trump family to bumbling crime lords in a parody reality show, he wasn't just mocking them, he was tapping into a collective sentiment. For many people, the Trumps exist in this strange, contradictory space, a blend of real power and cartoonish absurdity that feels impossible to take seriously, yet somehow still influences national conversations. Kimmel didn't need policy analysis or political jargon to make his point. It was the simplicity of it all, a protest chant turned joke turned reality check, that made the moment land so perfectly. Meanwhile, back in the courtroom, Trump Jr. was likely wishing he could mute the entire scene. But that's the problem. No matter how much the Trumps try to control or spin the narrative, moments like these make it clear they're losing the battle for public perception. When your family name is being shouted alongside the word crime by protesters on the street, and it's not a metaphor, it's a tough sell to claim you're misunderstood visionaries. Junior's attempt to paint his father as an artist wasn't just weak, it became a national punchline, especially when those outside were practically yelling the truth through a megaphone. Kimmel, of course, didn't let the contradiction slide. He pointed out how hilariously mismatched the financial artist defense was compared to the street-level chant of crime family, calling the whole spectacle performance art in itself. Then, with one final punchline, Kimmel drove it home. Instead of trying to prove his father's genius, Trump Jr. should have just pleaded insanity and called his dad the Picasso of making bad decisions. It was a masterstroke, funny, biting, and nearly impossible for Team Trump to clap back at without looking even more ridiculous. And that's the brilliance of Kimmel's comedy. He doesn't just roast people, he dismantles their narratives in a way that feels universally relatable. Strip away the politics, and you're left with a clear, human truth. No matter how much power or money they have, the Trumps can't outrun their own reputation. Every time they try to rewrite the story, reality, and a few timely protesters won't let them. But while the protesters handed Kimmel the perfect comedic assist, it was Donald Trump's reaction that really made headlines next. Spoiler alert, he was not amused. In fact, his attempt to silence Kimmel may have been the most unintentionally hilarious part of this entire feud. As it turns out, back in 2018 during his presidency, Trump reportedly directed White House staff to pressure Disney executives, the parent company of ABC, to stop Jimmy Kimmel from making fun of him during his nightly monologues. Yes, you read that right. A sitting president used his position of power to try and shut down a late-night comedian's jokes. If that doesn't scream thin-skinned, nothing does. And as desperate as that attempt was, it backfired spectacularly. When Kimmel found out, He did what any seasoned comic would do. He turned it into even more material. This is where the irony truly shines. Trump, the self-declared warrior against cancel culture, essentially tried to cancel a comedian because his feelings got hurt. The man who built his entire persona on mocking opponents couldn't handle it when the tables turned. Add to that the fact that Trump routinely calls his critics enemies of free speech, and you've got a hypocrisy sandwich large enough to feed the entire country. Naturally, Kimmel pounced on the absurdity and turned it into a segment that reminded everyone why satire is such a powerful tool, and why some targets practically beg to be roasted. Jimmy Kimmel addressed Trump's reported attempt to censor him the only way he knows how, by doubling down on the laughs. He likened Trump to President Karen, demanding to speak to the manager of Disney because a late-night joke hurt his feelings. Usually, when he wants someone to stop talking about him, he pays them $130,000, Kimmel quipped, before adding, "Don, if you're reading this, we only accept cash. Your awful NFTs won't cut it." It was sharp, hilarious, and deeply revealing. The image of a sitting president using his power to silence a comedian was more absurd than anything Kimmel could write. Yet it happened. Kimmel used the moment not just for laughs, but to highlight a bigger point: how fragile Trump's ego really is, and how dangerous it is when leaders try to control public criticism. And, of course, it backfired. Instead of silencing the jokes, Trump gave Kimmel more material and made him even more relevant. Even Trump's usual defenders stayed quiet, exposing the hypocrisy of those who scream, "cancel culture," but had nothing to say when their guy tried to cancel comedy. In the end, Kimmel didn't just win the moment, he made it unforgettable. His roast reminded everyone that humor is still one of the sharpest tools for holding power accountable. And the harder Trump tries to control the narrative, the more he becomes the punchline.